They said the Galactic Empire was unshakable, a civilization so ancient it had forgotten what fear felt like. For 3,000 years, peace held across every star lane, until the night an orphanage on the fringe of human space was turned to ash. No soldiers, no weapons depot, just children. And when the Empire tried to bury it under paperwork and silence, humanity did something no species had dared in millennia. We stood up, we broke the peace, and the galaxy learned what happens when you harm our own. Stories where humanity refuses to bow. Hit the like button. It really helps more people discover these HFY tales. And if you want more cinematic, emotional sci-fi stories every week, consider subscribing. Share this with a friend who loves epic space lore. They'll thank you later. No one expected Meridian Outpost to become the place where history cracked open. It was a quiet station, barely more than a refueling hub clinging to the edge of human territory. A place where miners grabbed cheap noodles after long shifts, where traders complained about fuel taxes, and where the local orphanage sat tucked behind a hydroponic garden like a safe little pocket of hope. That hope died in 14 minutes. When the distress beacon finally reached Central Command, it arrived as nothing more than static wrapped around a single line of corrupted data. Fire, children, help, then silence. Not the kind of silence that follows an equipment malfunction. The silence had weight. It felt deliberate. A team was dispatched immediately. A medical crew, 3 investigators, and 1 soldier who volunteered to join even though protocol didn't require armed personnel. His name was Lieutenant Jamin Park. Friends called him Jay. He didn't know why he felt compelled to go, just that something in his gut told him this wasn't an accident. He had no idea his name would be taught in alien academies centuries later. The landing. The shuttle cut through Meridian's thin atmosphere, gliding over the outpost that once glimmered with soft lights and lazy traffic. Today it looked abandoned, deserted, too quiet for a place usually crawling with off-duty miners and excited children chasing food carts. The moment the shuttle touched down, the team stepped into air that smelled faintly of melted metal, and something worse. Burned plastic mixed with charred wood. Jay's hand instinctively tightened on his rifle. "Where's everybody?" the medic whispered. Jay didn't answer. He already saw the scorch marks. Not typical industrial burns. These were narrow, precise pattern burns, like a razor slicing through steel. No explosion signatures. No blast residue. The marks stretched across the wall of the orphanage in looping arcs, as if a surgeon with a torch had carved straight through it. Jay crouched beside the marks and ran his glove over the grooves. The edges were too clean. "You're thinking what I'm thinking?" An investigator asked quietly. Jay nodded. "Empire plasma cutters." "But why would the Empire target a human orphanage?" she whispered back, as if saying the words too loudly might summon something. That question would echo across the galaxy in the weeks to come. Inside the ruins, the interior of the orphanage was worse. Far worse. Beds melted into twisted frames. Toys turned into puddles of colored glass. The hollow readers the kids used for school had fused to the floor. Jay stepped carefully, afraid each movement might erase some small remaining truth. He spotted them first. Tiny metal tags scattered among the debris. They were simple identification chips, each encoded with a child's name. Some were charred, some cracked, some half-melted. Jay knelt and gathered them with shaking hands. 23 tags. 23 children. All gone. He didn't know the children, but he felt the weight of each tag like a heartbeat that would never come back. The medic covered her mouth as she looked around. She'd seen battlefield casualties before, but this was different. This wasn't war. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. The black box. It took an hour to find the security node, buried under collapsed roofing. The investigators pried it loose with a crowbar while Jay kept watch. When they finally cracked it open, the room fell absolutely silent. Not because of shock, but because they all understood the implications before a single frame of footage played. Empire tech was embedded in the device. Human systems didn't use this type of encryption. The Empire did. When the footage finally loaded, Jay felt his stomach drop. Figures in sleek obsidian armor moved through the orphanage halls in formation. No insignias. No voices. They weren't rushing. They weren't searching. They were executing a pre-planned pattern. Right up to the moment a child ran into the hallway, clutching a stuffed toy. The armored figure nearest the child didn't hesitate. A flash of light. The child fell. No warning. No confusion. No misidentification. Just a clean, emotionless kill. The medic turned away, tears streaming. Jay kept watching because someone had to. He saw the soldiers plant the charges. He saw them extract a sealed container from one of the classrooms. He saw them disappear into the night as the building caught fire. Then the footage cut out. The investigators exchanged horrified looks. This can't be right, one muttered. The Empire signed the peace accords. They haven't initiated a hostile action in 3,000 years. Jay finished for him, and they wouldn't break it for an orphanage. But they had. The medic finally asked the question hanging over all of them. What was in that container they took? No one answered. The message behind the silence. Back on the shuttle, the team transmitted their findings directly to the Human Council. Then they waited and waited. The expected flood of orders never came. No emergency meeting. No public announcement. No outrage. Just silence. Deep bureaucratic, unnatural silence. Jay felt a chill. They're sitting on it. Why would they? The medic asked. We have proof. This was an Empire operation. One investigator leaned back, rubbing her temples. Because if we make this public, we're accusing the most powerful civilization in the galaxy of murdering children. If the Empire denies it, do you think the Council is ready for what comes next? A war against a species with 10,000 worlds. So we do nothing? Jay asked. Her silence was answer enough. The shuttle returned to Central Command 2 hours later. The team was escorted into debrief. Their statements were recorded. The evidence was secured. Then they were told to go home, rest, and not speak of it. Jay walked out of the building feeling like gravity had tripled. They all knew what was happening. Someone, somewhere, was burying the truth, the spark. But news spreads, even without permission. A mechanic overheard a medic crying in the hallway. A pilot saw scorch marks on the shuttle hull. A janitor saw the melted child tags. Rumors became whispers. Whispers became anger. Anger became something sharp, something molten, something ready to ignite. By the time night fell, a single phrase was already trending across every human network. Who attacked the children of Meridian? Millions demanded answers. Billions demanded justice. And when the Empire issued their first statement, a cold, dismissive line claiming no involvement and suggesting the incident was likely internal human negligence, the spark became a fire. For the first time in 3,000 years, humanity didn't bow. We clenched our fists, and the galaxy shivered. Humanity expected outrage. They expected apologies. They expected the Empire to act like a civilization that claimed to value order above all else. Instead, the Empire gave them something far more disturbing. Nothing. Not a whisper. Not a correction. Not even the faintest twitch of concern. It was the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was intentional. And intentional silence is often louder than any threat. The statement that broke the illusion. The Empire's single, cold message spread across human space like a crack in glass. We deny involvement. The structure failed due to substandard human construction. No further commentary. That was it. Billions of humans stared at the statement replaying on every broadcast channel, every tablet, every screen embedded in every ship hull. Substandard construction. As if 23 children simply collapsed themselves into ash. It wasn't just dismissive. It was dehumanizing. And the galaxy noticed. Even species that usually avoided human matters stopped to watch. The Kyrian observed from their floating citadels. The Talvora listened through their telepathic echo chambers. The Vernic traders, who love profit more than politics, paused shipments just to follow the unfolding drama. Because everyone knew something was off. The Empire didn't need to lie. Not unless the truth was worse. Inside the council chambers, Humanity's leaders gathered in the largest chamber Earth had constructed in the last century, a crescent-shaped auditorium filled with sweating diplomats, flickering screens, and hurried whispers. Ambassador, Noor Patel slammed her hand on the podium. They're challenging us. No, they're mocking us. We should not let this stand. Across from her, Representative Armin Song shook his head. If we accuse the Empire without absolute, undeniable proof, we risk total war. Billions dead. Our colonies flattened. Every diplomatic treaty destroyed. A third voice cut in, older and steady. Our men, they killed children. The room fell silent. But even with the evidence Jay's team recovered, the armor footage, the scorch patterns, the stolen container, political minds did what they always do when confronted with horror. They hesitated. Someone whispered, "We should negotiate." Another muttered, "Maybe it was a rogue faction." Another, "We cannot fight the Empire." Fear wrapped itself around every argument, like vines choking a tree. And yet, one truth pushed its way to the front of every mind. If humanity let this go, they would never be respected again. Jaemin Park refuses to stay silent. Jay sat in the observation gallery, watching the debate lose itself in circles. He wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't supposed to speak. But sometimes the wrong person sitting quietly does more damage than the right person speaking loudly. He rose. The gallery guards moved to stop him, but one recognized the look in his eyes, the same look he had on Meridian. They let him pass. He stepped into the council floor. Cameras swiveled. Delegates froze. "Lieutenant Park," Noor Patel said, "this session isn't open to military testimony." He answered calmly, but every word felt like steel. "Then close your session and keep talking. While you do, the Empire is erasing evidence, threatening witnesses, and pretending those children never existed." A murmur rippled across the chamber. Jay continued, "I held their ID tags in my hands. I saw the footage no one wants to talk about. I carried the bodies of children who should have been eating breakfast and arguing about cartoons." He looked each representative directly in the eye. "You want peace. I understand that. But peace isn't the same as dignity. Peace isn't the same as safety. Peace means nothing if it's built on our silence." His final words struck the chamber like a dropped blade. If we don't defend our children, then we don't deserve peace. For the first time since the orphanage burned, the room truly listened. The Empire makes it worse. Hours later, the Empire sent a second message. Not to humanity, but to every species in the galaxy. Humans intercepted it anyway. It said, "Human space suffers internal failures. We advise all nations to avoid entanglement." Avoid entanglement. As if humanity were a contagion. As if the Empire already considered them destabilized, weakened, irrelevant. And then came the final line, a line that history books would replay for centuries. Human emotional volatility continues to be a known issue. That was the moment the mask cracked, not for the diplomats, not for the politicians, for the people. Across the colonies, Luna, Titan, Mars, She-9, Kepler's Dawn, ordinary humans felt something churn inside them. Not the quiet pain of tragedy, not the stunned shock of injustice. Something older, something primal, something protective. The Empire had insulted humanity itself. And humans, unlike most species, didn't shut down when pushed. They pushed back. The data leaked that changed everything. 2 days after the second message, a transmission hit the networks. Anonymous source. Untraceable origin. Encrypted so cleverly it took an AI lattice 10 minutes to verify its authenticity. The message opened with a single sentence. "This is what the Empire stole from the orphanage." Then came the footage. Not battle footage. Not children. Something entirely different. A slim, metallic capsule rested in a classroom corner, hidden behind a false wall. Inside it was a sphere of shifting silver, pulsing like liquid starlight. Not a weapon. Not human tech. Alien. Impossible. Alive. A voice on the recording whispered, "We found it 2 months ago. It came from outside map space. We were studying it. The children liked it. It sang. Sang. The object emitted soft, harmonic tones. gentle enough that the children approached it without fear. The Empire's soldiers had taken that capsule, with military precision, with pre-planned extraction patterns, as if they'd been tracking it long before humanity even discovered it. Jay watched the leak unfold, fists clenched. Whatever that object was, the Empire wanted it badly enough to kill children for it. And now everyone knew. Galactic reaction, not what anyone expected. The Empire responded instantly. Fabricated. Human disinformation. Their denial was too fast, too sharp, too afraid. Other species took notice. Empire allies avoided eye contact. Neutral factions issued concerns. Even the distant Kyrians sent a message of unsettling curiosity. The galaxy sensed something was very wrong. Empires don't fear humans. Not unless they made a mistake so catastrophic that even their own history books cannot justify it. Humanity's breaking point. On the outer colonies, vigils for the children turned into marches. Marches turned into protests. Protests turned into a single shared demand. We want answers. Now. One night, as the crowd swelled outside the council hall on Mars, an old miner stood on a bench and shouted, "They think we're soft because we've been peaceful for 3,000 years. They forget who we were before the treaties. They forget what humans become when you strike at our young." People began chanting, not for war, not yet, but for truth, for courage, for justice. Inside the hall, the council finally realized something simple and terrifying. If humanity stayed silent, it would break us from the inside. If humanity spoke, it might break the galaxy. Both choices were dangerous, but only one allowed humanity to keep its soul. And that choice would soon tear the stars open. For 3,000 years, humanity had worn peace like a second skin. Children grew up without learning the shape of fear. Soldiers trained for disasters, not invasions. The idea of war, real war, was ancient history, something locked behind museum glass. But the Empire shattered that peace with 23 deaths. And humanity discovered that peace was not the same as weakness. It was restraint, a restraint that was now slipping. The night the council finally split. After the data leaked, the Human Council met in emergency session. Every representative attended. Even the distant colonies called in through shimmering hollow panels. Ambassador Noor Patel spoke first. Every child on Meridian deserves justice. Every parent watching this deserves honesty. We can no longer pretend the Empire's silence is an accident. She projected the orphanage footage again, the armored figures, the fire, the stolen capsule. Even though everyone had seen it already, the room still recoiled. Representative Armin Song stood slowly. We cannot rush to war. We must be rational. Rational, Noor snapped. They executed children. Armin pressed on. If we provoke the Empire, humanity will burn. Do you know what their navy looks like? Have you seen their armadas? They can blot out a star. We won't survive a week. A third delegate rose, a young colonist from Titan named Myra Chun. With respect, Representative Song, we won't survive as humans if we let this pass. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with something sharper. They want us to back down. They want us to act small. But humanity has crossed black holes, built cities on frozen moons, cracked quantum barriers, steered storms, reshaped deserts. Peace didn't make us weak. It made us clever. It made us patient. It made us unify. She gestured to the footage of the capsule. And now the Empire is hiding something. Something alive. Something it murdered children to take. The room shook with murmurs. Armin shot back. Without proof of intent, we cannot. We have intent. Jamin Park interrupted from the balcony. The chamber turned. He held up a datapad, the one containing the full, unedited black box extraction logs. The Empire didn't just take that capsule. Their soldiers followed classified extraction protocols. I've studied their tactics. This wasn't a rogue cell or a misunderstanding. He looked at every representative. This was a sanctioned operation. Silence swallowed the room. And finally, like a fragile thread snapping, I motion we end diplomatic silence. Noor Patel said, we confront the Empire. The motion passed, not unanimously, but decisively. Humanity had chosen its path. The message sent to the Empire. Humanity's transmission was direct, clear, unflinching. We demand an explanation for the Meridian massacre. We demand a return of the stolen object. We demand accountability. For 5 hours, there was no response. Then, at 3:12 Galactic Standard Time, the Empire replied, "Further human aggression will be interpreted as destabilizing activity. Release all fabricated data. Do not pursue this matter." But it was a final sentence that ended the last thread of peace. This subject is closed. Closed. Just like that? As if 23 children were a footnote? No, humanity wasn't closing anything. The protests that became something else. On Earth, 10 million people gathered in Unity Square. On Mars, crowds filled the red dust streets, chanting beneath domes. On the orbital rings above Jupiter, engineers paused their work, floating silently as they watched the Empire's message on giant screens. And on Titan, colonists lit lanterns, one for each lost child. Jay watched the Titan vigil from a holostream, eyes burning. He saw people from every colony, every background, every age standing shoulder to shoulder when a species attacks our young. One woman said during an interview, "They declare themselves our enemy. They just haven't realized it yet." Another man added, "If the Empire thinks we're too scared to fight, they've forgotten the history we buried to keep the peace." The anchor asked him what history he meant. The man answered softly, "Humanity only needed one world to become dangerous. Now we have dozens." His words spread across the networks until they became a chant repeated by millions. "We are not afraid." The quiet preparation. The Council didn't declare war. Not yet. They called it defensive mobilization, a phrase that sounded calm, measured, almost harmless. But behind those words, the machinery of humanity began to turn. Shipyards that once built exploration vessels started forging armored hulls. Research stations repurposed their labs for shield harmonics and propulsion upgrades. Quantum engineers dusted off designs that had been locked away for centuries, designs too dangerous for peacetime. Humanity had forgotten war, but it had not forgotten how to innovate. In orbit above Earth, the Soul Defense Network flickered awake for the first time in a millennium. Ancient satellites, dormant for centuries, lit up like awakening giants. Their power grids hummed as they synced with modern systems. Engineers watched the readings on their screens with awe. "We haven't activated these since the Outer Rim skirmish," one whispered. Another corrected him. "No, not since the Endymion Rebellion. That was almost 2,000 years ago." Humanity didn't resurrect these defenses lightly. But this time, the threat wasn't internal. It came from the stars. The Empire's miscalculation. The Empire watched all of this through their intelligence networks. Their analysts dismissed human mobilization as symbolic. Their admirals smirked at humanity's primitive military revival. "Humans won't fight," one senior imperial strategist commented. "They rely on treaties, on peace, on fear of greater powers." But the Empire's analysts forgot something essential. Peace had never been humanity's natural state. Peace was a choice, a commitment, a discipline. Humanity loved peace, but it did not fear war. And when pushed, humans did not freeze. They evolved. The moment peace finally broke, it happened on a quiet Thursday. The Human Council sent a final message to the Empire. "We will not drop this matter. Return what you stole. Face what you did." An hour later, an Empire destroyer crossed into human space without authorization. It cut straight toward the Meridian ruins. A warning shot? A test? A threat? No one knew. What they did know was a human patrol ship, a small corvette named Hope's Compass, intercepted it. The destroyer ignored all hails, ignored proximity protocols, ignored the corvette's position entirely. As if humans weren't worth acknowledging, the corvette moved to block its path. The destroyer did not adjust course. It rammed the human ship. All hands lost. Every screen in human space lit up with the alert. An Empire warship had just killed 37 human officers. On purpose? By accident? Did it matter? The line was crossed. The treaties were null. The galaxy held its breath. And humanity, after 3,000 years of restraint, finally exhaled. Jamin Park stood in the operations center as the emergency alarms blared. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Then this is how it begins." Because peace wasn't taken from humanity. The Empire broke it, and humanity was about to show the stars what happens when a peaceful species finally stops holding back. The storm outside the ruined outpost snarled like a wounded beast, but inside, the pack stood silent, every ear tilted forward, every muscle locked. They weren't just waiting. They were listening. Because the human, Jin-Ah, was no longer simply their ally. She was their anchor. And tonight, she was their last hope. The elites of the Dravari Dominion, silver-skinned assassins bred to erase civilizations, were already descending the ridge. Their steps made no sound in the sand, but the pack felt them. The air grew sharp. The temperature dropped. Even the shadows seemed to bow toward the killers. The eldest wolf, Harrowell, whispered, "They come." Jin-Ah rose from where she had been kneeling, her fingers still resting on the cracked helmet of their fallen scout, Minrick. She didn't wipe the tears that burned her eyes. She let them stay. They weren't weakness. They were fuel. She took in a slow breath. "All right," she murmured. "Then we end this." The pack straightened at her voice. Even wounded, even starving, even grieving, they moved as if her words pulled invisible wires through their bones. She stepped into the center. Listened closely. Every muzzle lifted. "Tonight, we finish what they started. No more running. No more hiding. No more losing our own. You hear me?" A rumble spread through the pack. Low, rising, dangerous. Jin-Ah continued, "You are not prey. You never were. You are warriors. And you," she placed a hand on Harrowell's chest, right over his heart, "are my family." The pack bristled, not from offense, but from something ancient and primal. Acceptance. Recognition. A bond deeper than species. Lightning cracked across the sky. And then footsteps. Dozens. Silent as ghosts. The Dravari emerged like shards of moonlight, walking in elegant, predatory lines. Their silver eyes scanned the wolves, the ruins, and finally the lone human standing at the front. The lead Dravari tilted his head. Curious. We expected an army, not a woman. Jin-Ah cracked her knuckles. Hope you brought a backup plan. The Dravari smiled, not kindly. Your kind should have stayed on your small blue world. Funny, she shot back. We were thinking the same about you. The Dravari lifted a hand, and the world erupted into motion. The assassins lunged, fast enough to blur into streaks of pale metal. But the pack moved too, unleashed in a synchronized surge that shook dust from the rafters. Claws met blades. Teeth sank into alien armor. Bodies collided with bone-breaking force. Jin-Ah charged straight through the middle. She knew she didn't have their strength or speed. What she had was strategy. The outpost map was carved into her memory. The support beams, the weak points, the stacks of unstable fuel cells. And she had the detonator wired to her belt. A Dravari blade lashed toward her throat. She ducked, grabbed the assassin's wrist, and slammed her elbow into his jaw. Armor cracked like ice. The alien swung again, but she pivoted, grabbed his momentum, and hurled him into a collapsing pillar. The whole structure shook. Good. She needed that. Another Dravari appeared behind her. Harrowell tackled in midair, ripping into the assassin's forearm with a furious snarl. Harrowell, left flank now. He obeyed instantly, pulling 3 wolves with him. Jin-Ah sprinted for the central beam. It was the only thing holding the northern arch upright. If she could bring that down, the falling debris would separate the Dravari into 2 kill zones. One for the pack, one for her trap. A blade grazed her arm. She hissed in pain but didn't slow. She reached the beam, pulled the charge free, slapped it against the metal. A Dravari landed in front of her, silver eyes glowing brighter. Human, surrender your pulse mind. Not on my to-do list. She hit the trigger. The explosion tore through the beam with a deafening roar. The arch groaned, shuddered, and collapsed like thunder. Dust swallowed the air. Chunks of metal crashed like meteors. Jin-Ah ducked behind a console as a sheet of debris slammed down. When the dust settled, half the Dravari were trapped behind a wall of wreckage. Good, but not enough. The remaining assassins advanced, slower this time, cautious. They knew she was dangerous. Jin-Ah wiped blood from her cheek, steadied her breath, and raised her chin. Pack, on me. Wolves materialized around her, like shadows knitting themselves together. The Dravari leader stepped forward, twin blades unfolding from his arms. You cannot win, human. She smirked. I don't need to win. I only need you to lose. He lunged. She dodged, but he was impossibly fast. His blade grazed her ribs. Pain flared white-hot. She bit back a scream. The pack pounced, but he spun, slicing arcs of silver that forced them back. But Jin-Ah wasn't retreating. She was watching, counting, timing. Every movement the leader made had a rhythm, a smooth, dance-like precision, perfect, predictable. She feinted left. He struck right. She ducked under his blade. He pivoted for follow-up, and she slammed her fist directly into the injury she had spotted, a hairline fracture in his plating near his sternum. The impact sent a shockwave through him. He staggered. She lunged, wrapped her arms around his waist, and used his own momentum to throw him backward, straight into the sparking remains of a power conduit. Electricity arced over his body. He shrieked. The pack didn't hesitate. They descended on him like a storm of fangs and fury. When they leapt back, the leader lay still, silver skin cracked and flickering. The remaining Dravari faltered. For the first time, they were afraid. Jin-Ah stepped forward, blood-soaked, exhausted, but standing tall. Leave, now, or join him. One of the assassins hissed. Human, what are you? She held their gaze. Someone who protects what's hers. Silence. Then the Dravari retreated, not in a rush, not in disgrace, in respect. They vanished into the storm, leaving the pack staring after them. Hayar'Uel turned to Jin-Ah, lowering his head until his forehead touched her hip. You saved us all. No, Jin-Ah placed a trembling hand on his fur. We saved each other. The storm eased. The ruined outpost glowed faintly under the newborn sun. And something shifted in the pack. Not just gratitude, not just loyalty. Something legendary. From that day forward, across the farthest edges of the galaxy, whispers spread of a human who stood with beasts and fought off an elite unit with nothing but courage, fury, and love. They called her the Wolf Commander of Earth. And the pack? They mourned their dead, but they no longer mourn alone, because they had a human. And in this universe, that meant they had a future.